All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining me at this later time. I apologize for the inconvenience. I wanted to attend the bris of the grandson of my dear friend, our member Ann Strauss. Her son Jonathan, his wife Rachel, had a baby boy. The bris was just a few moments ago, and in a very meaningful fashion, they named the baby Michael Yakir, primarily after Jonathan's father, Michael Strauss, our beloved friend, the late Michael Strauss. Very, very meaningful, very beautiful name, Michael Yakir. Anyways, okay, so we're here now. It's 11:45, and we are going to study Parshas Behaalosecha. Thank you for joining at this late time. So we are going to start in the middle of Parshas Behaalosecha. We are going to start at the beginning of Perek Yud, which is page 782 in the Art Scroll. And if you're using the new Rabbi Steinsaltz Chumash, or relatively new, it's on page 787. So again, 782 in the Art Scroll, Stone Chumash, and 787 in the Steinsaltz. So when it comes to Perek Yud, what stood out to me, and it may be kind of like an obvious point, but what stood out to me is that there's a key word. It's a very obvious key word. It's not surprising that the Torah would use such a key word, but if we look at how many times it's used, I think it's instructive. I think it helps us to highlight something. And the key word that I'm talking about is the word nosea. Nosea, which means to travel. Now, it's no surprise that the word nosea would appear here because the Jewish people are about to travel. They are departing Har Sinai towards the land that Hashem promised. But let's take a look at the different uses or the different contexts of the word nosea, how it's used. The nosea meaning travel. They all make sense, but let's just look through them. And you'll see why I'm focusing on this. So Perek Yud Pasuk Aleph, 782 in the Art Scroll, 787 in the Steinsaltz. Vaydaber Hashem Moshe lemor, asei lecha shtei chatzotzros kesef mikshat haseh osam, v'hayu lecha lemikra ha'eda u'lemasa es hamachanos. So this is the commandment to fashion trumpets made of silver, and these trumpets, as we're told very clearly in the second pasuk, is that they are meant to summon the people and to tell the people to travel, notifying that it's time to travel. Okay, so we are being given the commandment of the chatzotros here because we are about to travel, and the chatzotros are the signal. The chatzotros are the signal of when to travel and when to stop traveling. Now, what's interesting is how detailed the Torah is in describing how the chatzotros would be used. I'm continuing to read in Pasuk Gimel, verse 3. V'saku b'hain, they will blow them, they'll sound them a tekiah. V'noadu elecha kol edel pesach al moed. Everyone will be gathered to the entrance to Ol Moed. V'im ba'achas yisko v'noadu elecha nesim roshei alfei Yisrael. If they sound once, it's to assemble the princes. And if they blow a trua v'nasu, there's the word again. The camps should start traveling. Those specifically, the ones that are lined up on the east of the Mishkan. Uskaten trua shenis, the second trua v'nasu hamachanos achonim teimana. Right, the ones that are in the south. Yisku ulamasehem. So it's already 4 times that we have the word for traveling. Naso, or Nasa, I should say. Uvahakila sakahal tiskulo sario. You gather of Aaron yisku chatzosu elokam luchasol dorzechem. Did I skip a page? No, I didn't. Okay, we're good. And then it finishes up in the next few psukim the different functions of the chatzotros. You blow it at a time of war. You blow it at a time of celebration. Fine. Skip to verse 11, Pasuk Yud Aleph. Vayehi b'shana hashenis b'chodesh hasheni b'esrim b'chodesh na'aleh hanan b'al mishkan ha'edus. Very important pasuk, very important date, a momentous occasion, right? It was in the second year, in the second month, on the 20th of the month. So we're talking about the second month in the year according to the Torah, which we call now the month of Iyar. But the second month on the 20th day, this is now the second year from leaving Mitzrayim. The cloud lifts up from the Mishkan. Remember, this was the cloud that represented Hashem's presence that led the Jewish people through the desert. It's the cloud that came down on Har Sinai. It's the cloud that came down on the Mishkan when Moshe set up the Mishkan, right, which we read about last week, and prior to this. So that cloud representing Hashem's presence on the 20th day of the second month of the second year, that cloud lifts up. It's time to travel, and we already know. We've already received the instructions before to know that when the cloud lifts up, that's when we're supposed to travel. Vayis'u b'nei Yisrael l'masehem b'midbar Sinai vayishkon ha'anan b'midbar Paran. And b'nei Yisrael travel. Vayis'u b'nei Yisrael. This is it's a prosaic pasuk, but it's a momentous event. Vayis'u b'nei Yisrael l'masehem b'midbar Sinai. They traveled according to their l'masehem, their journeys, as the way Rabbi Steinsaltz translates it, from Midbar Sinai. So again, we have the keyword for traveling. Again, no surprise that we're using this keyword, but I just want to highlight how many times it's used. Pasuk Yud Gimel 13. Vayisu barishona al pi Hashem biyad Moshe. So they traveled first. Vayisa degel machane b'nei Yehuda. Pasuk Yud Daled, and then it shows how everyone traveled in order. It says Vayisa degel machane b'nei Yehuda, and then in Pasuk Yud Zayin it says V'hurad hamishkan v'nasu b'nei Gershon nosei hamishkan. Right, then the Mishkan traveled. Pasuk Yud Ches 18 v'nasad degel machane Reuven litzivosam. Then the camp of Reuven traveled. So lots and lots of uses of the word v'nasa, again, expected. Pasuk Chaf Aleph, verse 21, v'nasu ha'ke'asim nosei hamikdash. Right, the family of Kahas who bore the actual kelim of the Mikdash. They traveled next. V'nasad degel machane b'nei Ephraim. Pasuk 22, Chaf Beis. V'nosad degel b'nei Dan, pasuk Chaf Hey 25. Eilemasei, pasuk Chaf Ches, verse 28. Eilemasei b'nei Yisrael etzivosam vayisou. These are the travelings, the journeyings of the Bnei Yisrael according to their hosts. Vayisou, and they travel. So over and over again, we have this word naso, or I shouldn't say naso because that sounds like a different word. Nasoa, or Nasa, that the Jewish people are traveling. And then, in the very next event that's listed, that word stands out, meaning Moshe now turns to Yisro. This is an event, this is the report to an event, which kind of like, the context of it makes sense because of what Moshe says to Yisro, but it stands out because what does Yisro have to do with anything? The Jewish people are traveling; they're heading to the land of Israel. So this event, this of Moshe turning to Yisro and telling him that we are about to travel, it stands out and it catches the attention of all the commentaries, and we're going to discuss it further. But I just want to highlight the use of the word nasoa. Vayomer Moshe lechovav. This is pasuk Chaf Tes, verse 29. Vayomer Moshe lechovav ben Reuel hamidyani chosein Moshe. Nosim anachnu. We are traveling. Again, no great shakes that he uses the word nosim, but just the fact that the first word out of Moshe's mouth, turning to Yisro, captures exactly the verb, the activity that's going on, links this story together in a chain with the Chatzotzros, the movement of the camp, now the event with Yisro, nosim anachnu, and then there's this back and forth. Yisro says, I'm going to my land. And Moshe says, no, stay with us. And then what happens right after the dialogue with Yisro is completed? verse Lamed Gimel, Pasuk 33, Vayis'u mehar Hashem derech shloshas yamim. Something which is a repetition, by the way. We already know that they left Har Sinai because we already read that pasuk before in this parak. But it says it again. Vayis'u mehar Hashem derech shloshas yamim, va'aron bris Hashem nosea lifnehem derech shloshas yamim lasur lahem menucha. And so Vayis'u, they travel. They travel for 3 days, and the Aron bris Hashem is nosea lifnehem, is traveling before them. Right, which is again something we already know. We don't need to be told, and yet it's repeated, and again it's repeated with the word nosea. And then we get to the next pasuk. One more pasuk. Vanan Hashem alehem yomam b'nosam min hamachaneh. Right, and the cloud of Hashem was on them b'nosam. Again, this word nosoa appears again and again and again and again. It makes sense why it appears, but it's used a lot. I think you would agree with me. And then finally, the last instance I want to show you is, of course, the famous 2 psukim that appear between the backwards nuns, and that is Vayihi bin so ha'aron. Right? When the Aron traveled, Vayomer Moshe, we have this tefillah, Kuma Hashem v'yafutzu evecha v'yinusu misanecha v'yipanecha uvnucho yamar shuv Hashem revos alfei Yisrael. So this is another separate, subunit of this parak, which again is introduced with the word nasoa, to travel. So let me summarize again. We began with the chatzotzros, which was for traveling, right? Linsoa. Then we had the description of the travelings, and the word nasa appeared many times. Then we had the dialogue with Yisro, which begins with the word nosim, and then following the dialogue with Yisro, it says Vayis'u mehar Hashem again, using the word Vayis'u 3 times. And then finally, in the last unit, Vayihi bin so ha'aron. So I broke the parak down into 5 different units, each of which is marked by the word linsoa or nasa, to travel. And again, it's no great chiddush. They're traveling now. I understand why the Torah uses that word, but it's interesting to me how much the word is used and how it's used to punctuate each one of these 5 subunits. Each one of these 5, I don't want to call them events, but each of these 5 sections of the 10th parak. Again, the chatzotzros, the traveling, the dialogue with Yisro, the repeat of the fact that they traveled, and then the tefillah of Vayihi bin so Aron that Moshe would say, Kuma Hashem. Okay, why am I making this observation? Why is it important to note that the Torah punctuates each of these sections with this key word of nasoa? So I think I'd like to claim, based on studying this, that it's coming to highlight the fact that out of all of this traveling, right? Everything is about traveling. The chatzos is about traveling. The camp, the movement of the camp is about traveling. Out of all this traveling, there's one person who's not traveling, right? Moshe says to Yisro, "Nosim anachnu," and against the backdrop of the many, many uses of the word nasoa, we have Yisro, who's not going with them. Right? So let's read the account of Yisro, who in my mind now stands out even more now that we see the word nasoa all over this parak, punctuating each of the 5 sections of this parak. Now let's look at Yisro, the guy who is not nasoa, the guy who is not traveling with them. V'yomer Moshe lechovav, this is Pasuk 29. Again, we're in chapter 10, Parak Yud, Pasuk Chavtes, verse 29. V'yomer Moshe lechovav, Ben Reuel Hamidyani, Chosein Moshe, Nosim anachnu el hamakom, Asher Omar Hashem also etein aleichem. We are going now to the place that Hashem said that He will be giving us. Hashem said, I will give to you. L'cha itanu, Moshe says, go with us. Vehitavnu lach, and we will make it good for you, or we will be good to you. Ki Hashem diber tov al Yisrael, because Hashem has declared that there will be good for Yisrael. Vayomer elav, and Yisro says to Moshe, Lo elech, I'm not going. I'm going back to my land. I'm going back to my birthplace. And to me, this always reminds me of Abraham. Lech lecha me'artzecha me'beis avicha el haaretz asher areka. The fact that he says artzi umoladti, it makes it sound as if what Yisro is doing is as demonstrative as what Abraham did when he was Lech Lecha. That's just a side observation. But let's continue. Vayomer, but Moshe presses, right? Yisro says, I'm not going, I'm going back to my homeland. Moshe presses. Vayomer, al na ta'azovo sanu, don't leave us. Right? Ki al kain yadata chanosenu ba'midbar vayisa lanu le'enayim. Right? Because you know our campings in the desert, and you can be for us eyes, right? There's a machlokas, doesn't mean you have been for us eyes or you will be for us eyes. That's not my concern right now. Moshe turns to him and said, Moshe's first approach was, you should come with us, it's going to be great. Yisro says no, and so Moshe's second approach is, we need you. Not just it's going to be good for you, but we need you. But Moshe continues, one more pasuk, and we need you, and it'll be good for you. Right? Putting more emphasis on the tov, on the good. And there's a lot of discussion. Is Moshe saying something different in the second time he talks about the good than the first time? That again, I don't want to get into necessarily, but there is a discussion. The first question we have to ask ourselves in this small unit is, when you read the next pasuk, it says, Vayisu mehar Hashem. They traveled from Har Hashem. My question to you is, did Yisro go with them or not? That is the question that occupies the rabbis for many generations, all the way from the earliest commentaries. It doesn't say explicitly if Yisro went along or not. Moshe got the last word, and then it says, Vayisu mehar Hashem. If you look simply at the text, either approach has equal claim to grounding in the text, because the fact that it doesn't say he went makes it sound like he didn't. But the fact that it says, Vayisu, and they traveled, maybe that plural includes Yisro. Maybe silence infers acquiescence. It's not clear. It's not clear, and I think, many have said before me that the fact that the Torah doesn't tell us is teaching us something. That we should take a step back and realize that the fact that the Torah is explicitly hiding this from us is something that we need to understand. As I was looking at some of the different approaches, particularly the Ramban, I saw also a question raised by Rabbeinu Bachya, another one of the medieval commentators. And Rabbeinu Bachya adds another question. Aside from the question of did Yisro end up going or not, he asks more of a moral or theological question. And that is, why does Moshe say to Yisro that they need him as a guide? The context of this request comes in the context of how Hashem is leading them as a cloud, telling them when to travel, when not to travel. They have the chatzotzros that is going to signal to the people when to start going. They're supposed to follow the cloud. What do they need Yisro for if they have Hashem? They have the Anan, right? A cloud during the day, a pillar of fire at night. Those are the Einayim. Those are the eyes of the Jewish people. Why does Moshe request of Yisro to fulfill a function that seemingly is already being fulfilled by the Ribbono Shel Olam? So that's another question which I'd like to discuss as well, as we try to understand this exchange between Yisro and Moshe. So I'd like to begin the discussion with the opinion of the Ramban, because the Ramban argues, and the Ramban this is reflective of his whole approach about how the Torah is presented to us not necessarily in chronological order, The Ramban applies that concept in several different places, but this is based on the Ramban's observation that this event of Moshe turning to Yisro and saying to him, "Come with us," is something that was recorded in the Torah much earlier. If you hold on to the place and you turn back to Shmos Perek Yud Ches, it's Parshas, the beginning of Parshas Yisro. Shmos Perek Yud Ches. I'll tell you the page number once I get it. It's the beginning of Parshas Yisro. Shmos Perek Yud Ches. Beginning of Parshas Yisro. In the art scroll, it is found on page 394. Page 394 in the art scroll. Now, we all know that Yisro shows up, and like any other father-in-law, he tells Moshe that I've got some good advice for you, and he advises him to set up that whole system of judges. And then at the end of all that advice, at the end of Perek Yud Ches, if you go to the end at Pasuk Chav Zayin, verse 27, it says, "Vayishalach Moshe es chosno." Moshe sent his father-in-law, "Vayelech lo al artzo," and he went to his land. So wait a second. Yisro comes, right? Vayishma Yisro, right? Yisro hears everything that Hashem did for the Jewish people. He joins the Jewish people at Har Sinai, and Moshe tells him everything that's happened. It's been amazing. Yisro gives his advice, and then at the end of the Perek, Yisro departs. And then we don't hear from Yisro. And then all of a sudden, in our Parsha, Parshas Behaalosecha this week, all of a sudden, Moshe's turning to Yisro. How did Yisro get back? So according to some commentaries, Yisro went home, converted his family and his people to Judaism, and then came back to join the Jewish people again. And then our Parsha talks about him leaving a second time. The Ramban says no. The Ramban says this Vayishalach in Parshas Yisro and Sefer Shmos, Vayishalach Moshe es chosno, is the same event that appears in Parshas Behaalosecha. It's the same thing. And really, the Ramban reads the events in a much different order. That Yisro came after Matan Torah. Yisro joined the people after Matan Torah. He sees Moshe trying to teach the Torah to everybody and answer everybody's questions, and so he gives them the advice to do the whole system of judges. And then he's there, and then they're ready to leave Har Sinai, and Moshe says, "Come with us," and Yisro says, "No, I'm going back home." And so this Vayishalach Moshe es chosno and Sefer Shmos is the same event in our Parsha. And so, according to the Ramban, did Yisro leave? Yes, he left. Even though it doesn't say in the Parsha, he very, very much indeed left. But even the Ramban admits that he came back at a certain point. That when he goes back to his land, he doesn't go back to his land permanently. That Yisro is not abandoning the Jewish people. Yisro is not saying, "I'm done." Instead, Yisro goes back to his land, El Artzi Vel Moladti, converts his family, and then rejoins the Jewish people. And we see in Navi, the descendants of Yisro, the Keni, appear as descendants of Yisro, which proves, according to the Ramban, that Yisro came back. Yes, Yisro left at this point, but he returned. And it seems to me that the way to back this up in the language is that, and I kind of got this impression from the Chama Leibowitz, I think she meant to say this, that Yisro doesn't say, "I'm returning to my people." He's not saying, "Ashuv," I'm going back to Midyan to settle in Midyan. He just says, "I'm going, lo elech," right? I'm not going with you because El Artzi V'Molati elech, I'm going. So he says going but not returning. And that might be, it's a subtle point, but that might be an indication, a hint, that Yisro is not going back to Midyan to stay. He's going back to Midyan to wrap up business there and convert people, and he will eventually rejoin the Jewish people. But what about this? What about this idea that Moshe turns to Yisro and asks him to be their Einayim, what about Hashem? So Rabbeinu Bachya, who asked this question, so he answered it as follows. He said that Moshe did this because not everybody had full faith or trust in Hashem, and not everyone felt so comfortable or so secure in this notion of following a cloud. It was for the Tanei Emunah. It was for those who had little faith or incomplete faith. And so they would rather trust a person, right? Yes, Hashem is leading them. But if they also had Yisro, somebody of flesh and blood that they could look at, they could talk to, they could question, they could interview, that would be helpful to people who needed it. Which to me is interesting. It's fascinating that the Rabbeinu Bachya would say this, because he's basically saying that, yes, we make space for people who may not be of full faith, which is startling if you think about it. Because, I mean, look at the event of the Egel Hazav, right? The sin of the golden calf. That's exactly an instance in which people did not have full faith, and they chose a different leader. Eila Elokecha asher halucha, right? We need someone, right? This Moshe person, he's gone, and so we replaced him with an Egel Hazav to lead us. And now Moshe is basically, according to Rabbeinu Bachya, Moshe is basically saying, I'm going to give you someone if you can't really relate to Hashem as leading us through the desert. It's so fascinating. I'm not going to get into it any further, but it's just fascinating that Rabbeinu Bachya would entertain this idea that Moshe made space for people who had little faith. It could be though that this approach of Rabbeinu Bachya follows an approach that we see reflected in the Meraglim, and that is what was the sin of the Meraglim? Was the sin of the Meraglim that the Jewish people sent the Meraglim, or was the sin of the Meraglim that they came back with a bad report and the Jewish people believed it? If you hold that sending the Meraglim wasn't a sin because you have to do your own hishtadlus, it's not a lack of faith to want to send spies to check out the land, even though Hashem gave it to us, then this is kind of like a parallel event. Right? Yes, we have faith, we have trust in Hashem, but we need something a little bit more tangible to hold on to. And so Yisro could be our eyes, just like sending spies could be something that we could rely on. Again, if you take that approach, that sending the spies wasn't an expression of a lack of faith. But I think what's going on here, with all this in mind now, I think what this story is trying to teach us is that I think it's a reflection on Moshe's sense of change and uncertainty. The word nosea appears over and over and over again to show you how transitory, how unstable it is to leave a camp in the middle of the desert and venture out into the wilderness. Right? So they now need to summon new resources of faith to trust Hashem, to follow him into the desert. As the pasuk in Yirmiyah says, Zacharti lo chesed ne'oraich avas kulosayich lechtech acharai b'midbar, the fact that you followed me in the desert. And so a reflection of that uncertainty this change in state from being in camp at the foot of Har Sinai to now being in travel. I think Moshe is giving voice to that sense of anxiety over the uncertainty of traveling, the vulnerability. And so the word nosea appearing over and over again captures that sense of transition, of change and uncertainty. And Moshe articulates it to Yisro. And basically what he says to Yisro is, we're going through a transition now, and it's very difficult, and we can use all the help we can get, but we have a destiny. And I know we're going to get to that destiny. And I want you to be part of it. But I want you to be with us in this moment of transition, this moment of uncertainty. And it was interesting. I was reading, Rabbi Moshe Lichtenstein has a great book on Moshe, Moses, envoy of God, envoy of his people, in which he sees Yisro as sort of as a spiritual seeker, someone who's always attracted to sources of spirituality, but someone who can't necessarily settle down. He's attracted by the wilderness. He's somebody who comes to the wilderness of Har Sinai because he hears of this great, spiritual revelation that took place. The fact that he lives in Midian is out in the wilderness. Midian is not in the population centers, the more powerful, secure population centers. He lives out in the wilderness because he's this spiritual seeker. And to me, taking that idea from Moshe Lichtenstein, I would take it one step further. He's someone who's attracted to wilderness and therefore repelled by civilization. And so he naturally comes to Har Sinai because that's in the middle of the wilderness. But once that wilderness is now changing back into civilization, meaning the Jewish people are now traveling in order to settle the land, that's not his personality. His personality, he's more attracted to the wilderness, to spiritual exploration, and repelled, as it were, by the more prosaic and structured environment of settled civilization, which is where the Jewish people are going. So Yisro also reacts to this scene of change and transition and uncertainty and says, you know what? That's not for me. Moshe Rabbeinu senses the change, the transition, the uncertainty, and says, you're someone who knows the wilderness. Come with us. Be a guide for us. But he can't do it. And this perception of Yisro, which Rabbi Moshe Lichtenstein develops much better than I did here, it's actually based on a medrash that you're all familiar with. And with this, I will conclude. I'm going to share on my screen something from the medrash Rabbi. I will read it as well, of course, because I only have it in Hebrew. But what you have in front of you is the medrash Rabbi, and it's a familiar medrash. Amr Reb Chia, Amr Reb Simai, Shlosha Hayu Ba'osa Eitza. If you look at the red arrow, there were three people who were involved in Paro's plan to deal with the Jewish people at the beginning of Sefer Shmos. Bilam, Ve'iyov, Ve'yisro. There were three individuals, Bilam, Iyov, and Yisro. Bilam, Sheya'at, Neherag. Bilam, who gave the advice to throw the babies in the Jordan River, not the Jordan River, the Nile River, he was killed. Bilam was eventually killed because he was the one who came up with the terrible plot. Paro asked these three wise people for advice. Bilam gave him wicked, evil advice. Iyov Sheshasak, Iyov was silent. Iyov was silent in the face of evil and tyranny. Nidon B'Yisurim, and he was judged for that with terrible travails. That's Iyov. Yisro Shebarach, Zachu Banav Yashuv Lishkas Hagazis. So Yisro ran away. Yisro ran away, and to an extent he was rewarded for that. But what does it show you about Yisro? Yisro is a person who flees. Yisro is a person who abandons. Yisro is a person who is not quite ready for the structure of society and civilization. He represents a certain sense of spirituality that needs a sense of independence and freedom. And the Torah highlights this at this moment of transition as a contrast to Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe is also anxious about transition and change, but he has the faith to power through it and summon whatever resources he can. The cloud of Hashem will lead them, but he could also have Yisro on his team. And in that way, Moshe is a little bit more pragmatic and a little bit more of a community builder. Yisro is somebody who community is too much for him. He needs to go off on his own. He needs to be in the wilderness. But Moshe is able to deal with this concept of transition and change. So just to conclude, we saw that this keyword nosea, I think, lends character to the entire process, the entire chapter here, the entire process of leaving Har Sinai and traveling towards the land of Israel. And this event of Yisro, where it's ambiguous if he travels with them or not, serves as a sort of contrast to the faith and the fortitude of Moshe. Yisro is not able to retain that faith in transitioning and moving away from a place of wilderness into a place of civilization, and so therefore he leaves. Either he leaves permanently or he leaves temporarily, whatever approach that you take. And I was just thinking in terms of this idea of how to reckon with change and transition. It's certainly something that many of us have been thinking about, in our current reality, where there is so much uncertainty. We don't know what the next few weeks will look like. We don't know what the next few months will look like. Dealing with a pandemic, dealing with a novel coronavirus, one which we're still learning about, has created so much uncertainty and anxiety of the difficulty of planning. But if we see ourselves as being in a wilderness, but having certain values, certain principles guiding us, that's our cloud. And turning to a person like Yisro, who can be our Einayim, is the fact that we turn to whatever experts we can, and that's not necessarily because we lack faith, but rather because we want to be as prepared as possible. And so that notion of transition and change and uncertainty and wilderness, I think certainly is can help us to think about the situation that we're in right now. All right, thank you everybody for joining again. I'm sorry about the schedule. I will see you next week. Have a great week.